questions actually in front of you. Thinking about this conference, about the patterns, models, drawings, my thought was just to try to maybe put a few new questions and hopefully to maybe open some new doors. Of course, I deal primarily with the 19th century, and therefore is my interesting for photography. But let's start. Actually, what we have seen here in these 2 days, and what we all know, that very important part of the creation of the icons of religious imagery, religious visual culture, is always connected with the techniques. Techniques, technology, development of technology always shaped religious visual culture. And if you look and if you search probably in detail, in every period of time, you will see that the creators of the religious visual culture had no boundaries as we have today, or maybe some art historians have. I know from the old lessons, for example, it's very well known that there is a transfer of the anti-classical art in the Byzantine art. It's not religious barrier or religious wall. During the early modern time, we can really compare inventing of the press or printing books and religious visual culture. The role of engravings, what we saw today on the example of Vladimir, for example, etc., etc. So always, even today, for example, we saw that authentic Byzantine icons with the photographs or with the internet. Never painters have that kind of barrier. So what was going on in the 19th century? It is well known that in the 1830, 1839, it depends how someone counts, the photography was so-called discovered. And photography actually changed the world. Changed absolutely the way of seeing, the way of the visuals, and there are so many examples how photography was used in the Western painting. Of course, that is something what is today very well known. It's not something new. But there is a question, did photography have any kind of impact on religious visual culture on the Balkans, for example, in the 19th century? Was there any connection? And that was what is my actually question, and that is the work in progress. I don't have so all answers. I'm very far away from that, but that is the question. If we look at the history of photography, we can see actually that we have in the Balkan visual culture very early some very important persons' photographs. For example, Anastas Jovanović. I think he's also known in Bulgaria. He's born in Vidin. Actually, he's Bulgarian by birth, but he later lived in Serbia all the time. He was in Vienna as a young student, donated by the Prince Miloš, and he was one of the first photographers, not only for the Serbs. He was one of the first among Viennese in that time. That was in the 1839, 1840. He shot some very early images of Vienna, and he made so many photographs, all I can say, this Balkan international trader community in Vienna, Greeks, Vlachians, Bulgarians, Serbs. So Anastas Jovanović was working for all of them. And Anastas Jovanović, in the same time, actually was the person who was, one of his jobs was the production of the religious images. Of course, his intentions was just to sell them. He also learned not only photography, he learned actually lithography, which was actually the new media in that period, and he produced a lot of these religious pictures. You can call it icons, or no matter, which have been actually printed. All of them have been printed in Vienna, but sold all around the Balkans. until today, we don't have any kind of catalog. So what was going on and how much of that was actually produced. But Anastasia Ivanovic and his photography could be also the part for the understanding of the way how, for example, photography changed the culture of the portraits. We know that during the 19th century, actually, we have for the first time the enormous number of photographs of priests, monks, bishops. That was actually a revolution. If you look, the possibility to find the picture of, for example, of one monk, not igumanus, and even iguman was the problem, not bishop, on the Balkans, you can very hardly find some of that. But since the second half of the 19th century, we have so-called democratization or revolution, I'll call it anyway, and you have actually pictures circulating all around the Balkans of everyone. Priests, I say bishops, and that with the priests is very important. And nowadays, I know that only one project called VAZE project, Visual Archive Southeastern Europe from Graz, which is collecting this online, which is collecting all different kinds of photographs and pictures, and you can see some of them. But also photography, that is something what we know. Photography changed the way of the portrait principles in general. You cannot understand the paintings of the middle of the 19th century in a European, American, Western world without thinking on the role of the photography. So photography had also the role, very interesting, in the in the creation of the images of the people or clerics on the Balkans. In the case of of course, I'm showing some examples which I can show. I speak a little bit theoretically, but with some examples. In the case of Anastasia Ivanovic, we have one very interesting, actually, situation. He photographed in Vienna Metropolitan of Montenegro. Of course, he wasn't the usual, he was Petar Petrović Njegoš. He was in the same time the leader of this country and the leader of the state and the Metropolitan. And he was wearing a Montenegrin folk costume all the time, But we have some kind, we can see how is iconography developing, or how this portrait culture was developing after the photography. We know that first Anastasia Ivanovic shot, and we have photography of Njegoš. After this photography, he created lithography. And that is what we have to think about. That this use of these new techniques. I saw in Skopje, for example, this textual writing, book which was written according to the printed book of the Armenia. This is absolutely, new modern media now is actually influencing some so-called traditional medias. And this portrait, for example, was used for the picture above his tomb in the in the beginning of the 20th century, when Uroš Predić painted this picture. Not any else. There are some other portraits of him, like bishop, classical, typical, in typical iconography, but they use this actually photography. And what is actually interesting, that Njegoš was proclaimed as a saint about 10 years ago, and then they started to paint his icons. and for me, of course, there's a huge question why photography is not icon and how that was connected. So they tried to connect something, but if you look at his portrait and the kind of his beard, you will see actually that it was created after the photography. So, and this is only the one line. I know we can speak, I don't have it for the presentation, but everyone who is going to church can see photographs from the Nectarius from Aegina, which are very venerated. And actually you have this transformation partly from one media to the photography, which can today probably serve also as an icon. That is one question, not question, but one idea, one thesis about the way how photography shaped religious visual culture. Second one is with the invention of the photography, actually absolutely changed the way we see the world. And for the first time, photography made the possibility for all people to see how some places look like, monasteries or holy places. We all know that, for example, in Greek, Serbian, Bulgarian cases, up to the mid of the 19th century, we have these old proskyneitarian books about the Holy Land, mostly created after the Christopher Jeffaris. But I found in the library of Serbian Patriarchate this Russian Voditelj, and inside you have, for the first time, actually photographs. And that is absolutely something new. Before you have some kind of symbolic view of the place with the iconography of the scene or the historical biblical event which happened on that place, and now you have absolutely something else. So, absolutely new dimension of perception of the holy place. And we all know probably in the all illustrated newspapers there are enormous pictures of the monasteries, and for the first time people actually have a new look. That is absolutely something different. Third, this invention of the photography and using of the photography, as I told you, changed actually the way how people are seeing this, the perception of the monasteries. And we have the use of the photography in something what we can call actually religious and paper icons. For example, this one, it's not, this copy is not good, but there is better. It comes actually from Dora Papastrato. Dora Papastrato, paper icons, but if you look a little bit carefully, it is the picture of the monastery Vodopedi, iconographically absolutely same as all older, with the subtitle and so on, everything you have, but made after the photography. It was printed in Vienna in 1839. I don't know for other examples, but this was something what is for me absolutely revolutionary. And if we all, again, if we have in mind how some old engravings or the vedutas of the monasteries look like, from the beginning of the 19th century or older, you have this absolutely new approach. The same case we have in one icon from the monastery, Hilandar. This is the photographic view of the monastery, which is absolutely, it was unknown in this manner up to the second half of the 19th century. And what we have this icon here, which was a gift to the King Peter from the Russian icon painters who lived in that moment in the monastery Hilandar. And if you look it a little bit carefully, when I saw first time, I saw something is not okay. I don't know what, everything is nice, but something is not okay. Then I realized actually, look this monastery painting. It is like some kind of impressionistic landscape. Actually, that is nothing that is created after the photography or in life, but that is this new way of seeing the world, actually incorporated in the icon paintings. I know that probably there could be so many other things. I don't know. I'm not sure. But this is what I have found for sure. Then we have also one other moment, third layer or third way, how we call it. That is the use of the photography by the monks. We have this photo album, which was created by the Hilandarian monks for the King Peter of Serbia. All photographs have been shot by the Andrei Babuin, who was in Salonika photographer. And actually they engaged photographer from Salonika to make to follow the King Peter's visit, then to shot all the monastery, and to give him later some kind of memorabilia photo album. But this memorabilia or this gift was not so, let me say, cheap one, in the sense that they very clearly decided to show him everything what is, worth in the monastery, the, icon of the Mother of God, different churches, parishes, and so on. And of course, we know the reason, because King Peter promised them that he will pay his debts there and so on. So they gave him the photo album. Inside is also in the first pages is the quality photography king and the monks and so on. So they started using photography in one very modern way, I would say. And at the end, if we are thinking about the modern photography, we must realize that actually photography of the paintings, icons, also have been the model for the other icon paintings. People took photographs, they shot some icons somewhere. Some of them have been reproduced in the illustrated magazines, and then after that you have people who are painting after that. And we have some examples, but in the case of this in the North Serbia. So photography, as we have seen in this very, very short presentation, is just something what was really enormous and very important for the culture and visual culture of the world, global visual culture in the 19th century. And of course, Balkans wasn't out. And the question for us is just to see in what level and how actually photography shaped also religious culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very interesting presentation. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker, Olga Vasi, who will be presenting the paper Models of Churches on Wall Paintings in Chios, Greece. Please.
Good evening. In several churches on the island of Chios, show different architectural patterns. The oldest representation is found in the Church of Panagia Krina, a key monument in the history of Middle Byzantine architecture, erected on Chios during the time of the dynasty of Ageli between 1185 and 1197. Its main naos follows the Catholicon of Nea Moni of Chios as its prototype and belongs to the octagonal type. On the wall painting, which has been revealed on the eastern side of the narthex after the removal of the new Alleias fresco decorations, Ευστάθιος Σεβαστός Κοδράτος και Οκτήτορ, as declared on the accompanying inscription that leaves no doubt concerning the identity of the man depicted, is standing richly dressed, looking towards the viewer, and offering a model of the church to Christ, who is sitting on the lap of his enthroned mother. Research has shown that this Eustathios and his wife belonged to the milieu of the imperial court. The landlord couple constituted part of the provincial aristocracy and apparently had estates in the fertile area of central Chios, where there were plenty of water springs, arable land holdings, and crops. The founder holds a painted copy of the church in such a way that the north side of the building is projected towards the viewer. This church representation displays the main features of Panagia Krina at the end of the 12th century. It consisted of the main naos and the narthex. Both parts of the church had identical domes that were cylindrical and tiled. Arched windows with circular oculi are depicted on the north wall. A large entrance door appears in the narthex, while the tiled roof of the narthex is lower than that of the main naoses. The roofs of the two parts of the church run along the same axis. The structure of the inner space of the main house of Krina is projected on the northern facade of the painted church as if seen from the inside. That is, the painter has drawn two semicircular conches at the corners and one in the middle, imitating the real conches supporting the dome. The masonry of the model resembles that of the cut-stone type, opus isodomum, while its color is denoted with a dark yellow ochre. The architecture thus represented generally possesses many of the distinctive morphological features of the church erected by Quadratos. Namely, the painted copy bears many similarities to the real constructed original prototype. More than a century later, at the beginning of the 14th century, in the same church, Panagia Krina, which was still a very important and iconic monument for the island of Chios, a second Ctitor was depicted again, holding a church and offering it to Christ in the narthex, but this time in the arcosolium of the southern wall. The founder scene is also of a funerary character, since the second Ctitor had been buried in the southern arcosolium of the narthex. His burial was accompanied by a silver coin of the year 1328 or 9. The identity of the second founder remains unknown. What can be assumed with certainty, due to his luxurious garments, is that he belonged to the provincial aristocracy as well. The representation of the second founder of Krina repeats the iconographic scheme of the first image discussed. The man stands on the right and offers a painted church with only the northern facade visible to Christ, who is sitting on the lap of his enthroned mother. The model of the endowment depicts the main architectural characteristics of the existing church of Krina, but there are more morphological details illustrated this time, differentiating it from the late 12th century one. The edifice consists of the polygonal apsis of the sanctuary, the main house and the exonarthex, since the existing exonarthex was added much later, in the year 1539. The two spaces had domes with large arched windows. One lobed and two lobed windows pierced the apsis and the northern facade in their actual positions on the naos. No door is depicted in the narthex, as in the 12th century model, since it had been blocked in the early 14th century. White marble columns are rendered with white brush strokes between the windows. The marble cornice that runs across the entire northern side is painted with a single white brush stroke, while the roofs of the domes and of the external wall are curved. The podium at the base of the northern wall, together with the brick dentil frieze underneath the roofs, are also visible. The masonry is once again composed of dressed stone of the isodomic type. Interestingly, this specific detail does not correspond to reality, though it was painted in the same way in the 12th century model as well. Only the red tint differs from the yellow one of the previous model. However, it really brings Krina to mind, since the dark red color resembles the red mortar joints of the church of Krina and the red color of the bricks of the masonry and of the decorative brickwork ornamentation which is found in abundance in the monument. Therefore, the painted church dating back to 1328 or 9 clearly is a reliable copy of Panagia Krina as it was fashioned at the beginning of the 14th century. At about the same time, on the southern part of the island, in Kalamoti, a clergyman and his wife founded a barrel-vaulted church in the countryside, much simpler than Panagia Krina, the so-called Panagia Grelopoussena. In the area of Akrelopi, in their private estate, the Anagnostis lector and nomikos notary Nikolos Pandevgenos and his wife Irini Mendoni built, according to the founder's inscription, a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary during the reign of Andronikos II Paleologos and Queen Irini in the period between 1295 and 1370. Almost immediately, the church also acquired the narthex in the west, and a few years later, before 1317, its interior was covered with frescoes. On the donor portrait, which is preserved intact on the northern wall of the narthex, the church founder is depicted at a mature age, wearing clerical black garments and holding the model of the church in his hands, offering it to Christ, who is blessing from heaven. This depicted church is a plain, single-nave building with its western and southern facades projected towards the viewer. It is a small, tile-roofed building without a narthex or any other particular external element. This image does not correspond to reality, since the church of Panagia Grelopoussana always had elaborate masonry, articulated facades, composite sculpture and brickwork decoration. Thus, the represented architecture is a substantial schematic abbreviation of the real church, which has rich morphological features on its sides which were omitted in the painted depiction. Not far from the previous church in southern Chios, another founder scene survived until the second half of the 20th century. The church of Panagia Keravlidena, near Nenida, was founded among olive groves and mastic trees on a private estate in the 14th or 15th century. It collapsed during the devastating earthquake that struck the island in 1880-81. The church was single-nave, barrel-vaulted, reinforced with a buttressing arch and with a narthex added to the west at a later period. On the western wall of the main house was a representation of the founder's family, in which a woman, a young girl, and a man holding the painted replica of the church in his left hand were to be seen. The church depicted was a single-nave, tiled building with only two sides visible, the western and the northern one. The entrance door was depicted on the west side and was drawn behind the head of the middle figure. At the eastern end of the church, a semicircular apsis pierced by a two-lobed window was painted against all rules of perspective. The masonry was depicted to be quite elaborate, following the isodomic type, with the particularity that the rectangular stones were divided by a diagonal line into two equal triangles, one of which bore dark color and the other light color, creating shadows on the stone as if illuminated by bright sunlight. The painted copy of the church was not faithful to the original. On the contrary, it portrayed the basic features of the building, a single nave house without a narthex, with the roof consisting of tiles, succinctly and schematically. The masonry of the copy bears no resemblance to the real one, which shows various morphological details, masonry with blind arcades bearing brick decoration on the lunettes, while the semi-cylindrical shape of the sanctuary is hypothetical against the actual three-sided wall of the apsis. Again in southern Chios, but this time inside the settlement of Peggy, instead of the open-air countryside, we find the church of the Holy Apostles Peter and Paul. The church belongs to a series of octagonal churches, copies of the Nea Monis Catholicon of the so-called insular or simple type. In a wall painting of the year 1665, which is dated with certainty due to a painted inscription on the northern wall, the group of founders is depicted, consisting of 4 men and 1 woman identifiable by inscriptions. The painting is found on the southern wall of the main house, and the inscription in capital letters reads, "These are the founders, the so-called Damalades, of this famous church." In the middle, 2 monks, Simeon and Meletios, hold the image of the church while looking at each other. The represented architecture shows the western side of the Holy Apostles in bird's eye view. The main house has a large dome and the narthex a smaller one. The domes are quite tall. On the painted dome of the main house, which is better preserved, the marble columns of the prototype are visible, conveyed with white strokes between the windows. The large dome is pierced by arched windows that have transenae with circular oculi, exactly the same as those that actually adorn the church domes. The main house is painted as a multifaceted building, thus referring to the octagonal structure that is evident in the interior of the building. Nonetheless, nothing else looks alike. The curved ends of the facades and of the domes, the elaborate appearance of the outer facades with the rich morphology and the external brickwork decoration, the architectural sculptures and the glazed balls, the composite wall masonry, which combines the cloisonné system with brickwork in the recessed brick technique, are completely absent. During the last decades of the same century, namely the 17th, in the poorer, inhospitable northern part of the island of Chios, a church decorated with frescoes was founded and was dedicated to Agia Paraskevi. In Viki, once a fortified village, the church of interest is to be found in the cemetery. It is a single nave, barrel vaulted building, and on its western wall, a partially whitewashed fresco is preserved, depicting a man clad in priest's vestment with his wife, who is wearing a dark blue mantle and a cover on her head, holding a church model. Their identities remain unknown. The represented architecture seems to levitate between the couple. Its high and wide dome with a tiled roof, as was indeed the case in the post-Byzantine churches of Chios, is distinct. Underneath it, a hardly visible, owing to the bad state of preservation of the wall painting, low drum perforated by rectangular windows can be seen. The architectural type of the centrally planned painted edifice does not resemble the real Ailos prototype at all. Following the short presentation of the preserved founder scenes in Chios, various conclusions can be drawn regarding the depictions of the churches during the Byzantine and post-Byzantine period on the island. First of all, it is confirmed from the Chian examples that the models of the endowment being offered by the founders are not architectural models, but scaled-down images of completed buildings. Specifically, in the two cases of Panagia Krina, the copies are faithful to the prototype in the appearance it had in the 12th and later in the 14th century. They fall into the category where the painted miniature copies of the high prototype exhibit some simplifications but retain the basic features of the original, and without being too precise, they succeed in presenting a fairly good reproduction of the Krina church. Again, the two copies of Krina, a monument of high standards from an architectural and painting viewpoint, provide further confirmation to the notion that more realistic images are to be found in monuments of prominent founders that belong to the upper social strata. Also, in regard to the Church of Krina, which offers the most complex conclusions, in the case of the represented architecture, which is held by the second founder and dates back to the Paleologan period, the principle of parallelism is evident. Namely, we have here a representation where the copy is depicted on the south side of the church, but shows the north side of it, and vice versa, so that the painted and real sides extend alongside each other. In the humble Byzantine churches of southern Chios, Panagia Grelopoussena in Kalamoti and Panagia Keravlidena at Nenita, the painted replicas are concise and schematic. In the second half of the 17th century, in post-Byzantine times, in the Holy Apostles at Pyrgi, the west facade was depicted, a very rare phenomenon in Byzantine times, as has also been observed in some Serbian examples that have been the subject of a special study. Regarding the last example, in which the painted object of donation bears no similarity or resemblance to the actual church, a suggestion has been expressed concerning a similar representation in Crete, that it is not a church model, but a tabernacle, artophorion, or a livanotis, incense burner, a liturgical vessel donated to the church. We believe that the conservation and cleaning of the damaged surface of the wall painting will allow us to clarify whether we are dealing with a naive, ignorant painter or with a donation of a liturgical vessel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful paper, and I hope that the conservation starts right away so we can find the answer. I'd like to present now our next speaker, Phaedon Hadjiantonio. Please. who will be presenting the paper A Sailboat Sketch, dating a constructive phase, or the old cemetery chapel of Pantokratoros, Monastery, Mount Athos. Please.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being invited here with you. And I don't know how to go forward to this. This one.
Yes.
Okay. So that's about the dating of a certain phase, constructed phase of one of the chapels out of the monastery. Thanks to the finding of sailboat sketch. Pantokratoros Monastery was founded probably shortly before 1357, and the Catholicon was inaugurated in 62-63. Two brothers, Alexios and John, Byzantine high officials, most probably members of the noble family Kontostephanos, related by blood to the royal family, were the founders. Alexios is on left, and on the right is John, and in the middle, holding the model of the Catholicon in neoclassical style, it's 1850 about, it's John as Ioannicios monk. While Alexios was killed in 1369, defending the island of Thasos from the Turks, his brother John, after the death of his wife, retired to Pantokratoros, where he became a monk named Ioannicios and died shortly before May 1387. The 14th century monastery's area was about the half of the present. You see here, you should consider the original about here, and then the southern part is new, some centuries after. Yet the building complex was a major constructive project at the time, including port facilities and the aqueduct. Recently researched during the restoration work at Pantokratoros has revealed remnants of an earlier building phase that proceeds by nearly 2 centuries, the 14th century phase of the monastery. Thus, a local tradition is reinforced, according to which the monastery was founded in the Komnenian era. On the other hand, several marble architectural fragments of 11th to 12th century of unknown origin are to be found embedded in second use in various buildings of the complex, and others stored in the basement of the Tower of the Ascension, certain stories of which are used as a museum. The current form of Pantokratoros has come through successive changes and extensions that took place over a long period of 7 centuries, up to the mid-20th century. However, the most important event in the building history of the monastery after its foundation is the extension of the original enclosure to the south, which gave the complex its current area about twice as much as the original. It's the green here, in the second half of the 15th century. This extension, that is, the buildings of the southern part of the west wing, as well as the southern part of the east wing and the entire south wing, changed in volume, use, and aspect in the following 16th century. The construction works of the 15th and 16th centuries were entirely made in expenses of Romanian rulers and senior officials. Their names are to be found written in the parousia, a wooden board that is kept in the sanctuary of the Catholicon, on which all the names of donors of the monastery are written and mentioned in the liturgy. The old cemetery chapel, dedicated to St. Athanasius the Athonite, stands on a steep cliff overlooking the sea, outside the southeast corner of the monastery's enclosure. It is a simple building with a double-sloped roof, rectangular in plan, and developed at 2 levels, the ground floor being divided into 2 rooms, the nave with a sanctuary and the smaller narthex. On the lower level, The two-lobe ossuary corresponds to the nave and sanctuary of the ground floor without extending beneath the narthex. The chapel has no wall painting decoration. The local tradition has it that St. Athanasius is the original 14th century cemetery chapel founded together with Pantokratoros, the monastery. But here, as in many cases in the rest of the monastery, the existing marble architectural members, a single column out of four, wooden, of a new iconostasis, the 1930s, and the architrave of the wooden iconostasis and the pillar of a two-mullioned window on the south wall are of the 11th, 12th century. St. Athanasius ceased to be used as a cemetery chapel when a landslide, probably caused by the strong 1765 earthquake, dragged down the cliff the graves that existed before the entrance of the chapel, as seen in this 1779 engraving. A new cemetery chapel was founded in 1771 on a gentle slope northwest of the monastery. We can reasonably assume that then a major overhaul would have been done in the chapel of St. Athanasius, but rather of a humble character, since it would have been considered dangerous and likely to collapse. It is likely that since then, the removing of valuable architectural members and building materials had begun in order to be reused elsewhere. Thus, marble pieces of the old iconostasis' lost columns were located at various parts of the monastery, in the refectory and in the basement of the tower, as well as fixed in the piers of the harbor, as you can see in this photo, the latter being used as piles to tie the boats. This one and, oops, well, from the position, I don't know what happened. I lost it. No, here. Okay, yes, no. Okay, I just wanted to show you up, but you can see on the dock. From the position of the remaining marble column, we conclude that the old marble iconostasis was taller than the new wooden one, which, as I told you, it was it was constructed in 1930s after the earthquake of 32 in Yerissos, with the base of the former placed lower than the latter. Three sections in three different places of the existing stone pavement in the nave revealed three older pavements. In the northwest corner of the nave, a big stone slab was discovered in situ. You can see the big, here, this slab, used to close an opening to the original pavement, where after exhumation, the bones of dead monks were dropped beneath the ossuary. That was a photo of the situation like it was early 70s, a photo made by Professor Paul Milonas. That's how it looks today. And here is the slab I told you from below. In the mid-1970s, a large-scale repairing of the chapel was made, including new cement plastering. Well, I have to tell you here, we decided to put some glass superfices here to show the different phases of the older pavement. So in the mid-70s, a large-scale repairing of the chapel was made, including new cement plastering on both the interior and the external wall surface, as well as the replacing of the roof. Much of the stone slabs of the nave was also removed, probably because it was thought an older pavement decorated with the technique of opus sectile might exist beneath, because as you can see, there are some examples of that. So it was removed because I could control that between the photos of Milonas and some works made after some 5 years after he passed, and they were removed. Obviously, this was not verified, that there was an older decoration. And so the stone slabs were repositioned in place without any further investigation into the underlying constructive phases. In the interior of the narthex, this is still the central, the main nave, the old plastering had been replaced, while the stone slabs of the pavement were not removed at all, since probably due to the slope of the ground, interesting constructive finds were not expected. This is the narthex pavement. It's, as you see, it's totally different than the other slabs. But when the old plastering was removed, on a piece of a pre-existing plaster over the entrance of the west wall, a sailboat sketch made with pencil was discovered and kept visible. Initially, the sketch would be likely covered by a stone plate, as you can see here, maybe a fountain inscription which had been removed previously at an unknown time and lost. It is a naive sketch made by someone who obviously knew well how the boats of his time were made and looked like. The boat has one big central bar with three big square sails, the central bar, and two smaller bars at the bow and at the stern with triangular sails. The stern balcony is strongly elevated with a railing that runs all around the poop, as it does at the lower part of the craft. I show you some details to see how it goes. The red spots are, it's under a plastic surface that I make this design, and the red spots indicate the points, the bittings of the plaster for replacing the plaster in a certain moment. So there are some details here, and perched on the rear end of the stern, an oversized flag is waving, and underneath a huge emphasized rudder is sketched. The sailboat of this wall sketch looks like being a galleon, gallioni in Greek, for example, having a great similarity with Dutch galleons on the end of the 16th century, which is one of these, or with a smaller boat of a relative type of vessels, for example, a pirate mystique of the same time. This wall sketch is thought to dating the last important constructive phase of the narthex, including the pavement, the latter having remained untouched in the last centuries, even after the 1765 earthquake. That was the reason that it was not seen by those who made in the 70s those works. During restoration work still in progress, sections were made in the narthex and human bones appeared being scattered under the pavement, already inside the pure lime plaster of the floor stone slabs. Soon we realized that the bones came from exhumation and were transported to the point, placed, shuffled, and irregularly scraped, and they belonged to more individuals. The research focused on the part of the floor along the north wall of the narthex, up to a depth of 45 to 60 centimeters, that is up to the natural rock on which the chapel is built. A considerable quantity of human bones of at least 5 replaced individuals, 5 mandibles, lower jaws were collected, came to light right under the pavement of the narthex. But at the bottom of the section, another unexpected finding appeared. On the west end of the section, 3 paves lying removed indicate the existence of an old burial of a monk, emptied before the space was filled with the overlying earth and bones of the exhumation that followed. This might have been the tomb of John, it is thought, Ioannikios, whose relics are together with his brothers Alexis in the Catholicon today, since 1850, even earlier. And as a result of this research, we contacted the radiocarbon archaeometry laboratory of Democritus at Athens in order to radio-dating samples of the bones and also make DNA testing. Following the instructions, we collected the bones and wrapped them in aluminum foil in order to be safely transported to the laboratory and avoid any contact with modern organic elements that would alter the test results. This testing process needs time, some 5-6 months from now. Until then, research continues and the question was promptly raised. Why these bones have not been placed together with the rest of the bones in the ossuary underneath the nave at the lower level of the chapel together with the rest of the dead monks? The answer might be that these bones do not belong to monks, but to laymen related to donor activities in the monastery, which is a founding building. Our thought goes to Barbul, who is mentioned along with his wife Stana as the most important 16th century donor of the monastery. A number of theories have been formulated around the identity of this mysterious Barbulos in Greek, without some of them prevailing so far, nor is there any anonymity as to the projects he funded. However, Barbul is reported to be associated with the fortification of Pantokratoros, namely the renovation of some of the towers or the fortification of the precinct wall. And these are information coming from several scholars. Some assume that Barbul is probably the noble Moldovan Gabriel Totrusanu, who financed in 1536-37 the construction of a water supply project for the monastery, and all confusion came from misspoking his name, as Peter Nasturel says. This portrait comes from, it's 1850. It's an interpretation of a lost portrait of Barbul given by Uspensky, who visited the place in his two travels in Mount Athos. The first travel, he saw the old position of the tomb of the founders, and after 10 years, he came and it had changed place. So there was a new iconography there, and the depiction of this man who has no name should be a reproposal of Barbul, according to Uspensky. So Barsky says that Barbul, together with his 3 sons, apart from the works inside the monastery, he also made the konaki out of the monastery and died there. This is a painting of 1726 that it's in Oxford, the Bodleian Library. Probably it was brought there by monks of the monastery who wanted money for some works at the monastery. So here there is a little house next to the port, and Barsky says that Barbul, together with his 3 sons, apart from the works inside the monastery, he also made the konaki out of the monastery and died there. Chrysochoidis understands the word konaki as a guest house, and Gabriel Millet gives the word konaki the designation hotellerie. Now, in this painting, it's written Thalatium Xenodοχείων. It's hotellerie by the sea. If this is the case, it is thought to be one of the currently ruined houses in the harbor, which in the Oxford, you just saw it, design is declared as a sea hotel, Thalatium Xenodοχείων. That's how it looks today, a bit more damaged. That was about this sketch. If I have 1 minute, I could show you some photos from...
I think maybe just 1 minute? It would be okay.
Other from this were taken from Vatopedi, from the Catholicon in the mid-80s when I worked. I replaced the lead foils of the Catholicon, and it was a huge collection of vessels from different periods, also including some towers that disappeared in the back. So in several, just wanted to show you, they are much older than the ones Pantocrator. And this is from Pantocrator Catholicon. The vessel you saw, it's just the only one in this monastery, like a boat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, especially for those beautiful photos taking us to the site. I'm very happy to now present our last paper of the afternoon by Ivan Vanev on the topic of unknown photographs from the archive of the dynasty of Mavro-Dinoviti. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Архивът на семейство Мавродинови постъпи в Института за изследване на изкуствата през октомври 2016 година. За съжаление, събирането на архивните материали започна след като жилището на Лиляна Мавродинова е било ограбено. Тук ще трябва да ви покажа един малко тъжен кадър, за който се извинявам. И след това започнахме с прибирането на архива, който беше оцелял на място. Въпреки това една значителна част от илюстративните материали, свързани с научната дейност на Йордан Иванов, Никола Мавродинов, Вера Иванова и Лиляна Мавродинова, се оказа на място и днес вече е част от архива на института. Научната обработка на архива започна в началото на 2018 година с реализирането на международния проект Bizart. Ръководител от българска страна е доцент Мотав. Обект на настоящото проучване е една непубликувана фотография, която представя олтарното пространство на неизвестна църква. Извинявам се, ако някой му е известна вече. Позитивното копие е направено от стъклена плака. Използвана е фотографска хартия с желатинова емулсия на немската фирма Leonard. Заводът в Хамбург произвежда фотоматериали с тази марка от 1910 година до 1964, когато става част от Аква. В горния край на плаката върху емулсията е имало надпис Свети Спиридон. Тук се вижда на гърба на фотографията на 3 реда е изписано с молив Свети Спиридон, Къде и Мелник. Почеркът е на Лиляна Мавродинова. Църквата Свети Спиридон в Мелник е спомената за първи път от Пол Предризе през 1907 година, като една от двете долепени църкви на средновековния манастир Света Богородица с Пилиотиса. Той обаче споменава за наличие на стари фрески само в църквата Света Богородица. По време на посещението на Никола Мавродинов в Мелник през 1930 година, църквата Света Богородица вече е съвършено разрушена и затрупана, както пише той. По същото време църквата Свети Спиридон е по-добре запазена, но е без покрив. Мавродинов я описва като малка еднокорабна базилика с вписана апсида и 2 странични ниши. Той успява да направи и общо заснемане на архитектурния план на църквата. Неговия план е горе вляво. Долу е плана на разкупвачите на двете църкви. За стенописи обаче нищо не споменава. По време на археологическите проучвания в основите на църквата са открити множество стенописни фрагменти. Те са датирани от проучвателите в периода 13-14 и в 16 век, но се свързват с съседната църква Света Богородица. Сведенията за изграждането на църквата през първата половина на 18 век и липсата на стенописи изключват възможността фотографията да е заснета в манастира Света Богородица с Пилиотиса. Тъй като фотографията е съхранявана в опаковка с други фотографии от Несебър, може да се допусне, че тя също е правена там. Ако се доверим на надписа върху стъклената плака, би трябвало да се насочим към църквата Света Богородица Панолитрия. която през първата половина на 20 век е известна и като Свети Спиридон. Тя се намирала на изток от старата митрополия, на ъгъла между днешните улици Цар Иван Асен II и Софроний Врачански. Разрушена е през 1954 година. Според изследователите, Света Богородица Понолитрия е изградена през 18 век върху основите на по-стара църква, от чиято тристенна апсида е имало запазени останки. Никой обаче не споменава за наличие на стенописи в олтара на църквата. Датирането на сградата в 18 век и публикувания от Асен Василиев план изключват възможността фотографията да е оттам. Все пак тя е правена в Несебър. Оказва се, че изследваната фотография отговаря на сведенията, които Андрей Грабар и Асен Василиев дават за друга несебърска църква. Става въпрос за олтара на църквата Свети Георги Мали, от който до сега не бяха известни запазени фотографии. Църквата Свети Георги Мали е била малка еднокорабна постройка с една апсида и протезисна и диакониконна ниша на източната стена. Въз основа на известните фотографии, запазените стенописи и публикувания план, изследователите условно отнасят изграждането на църквата към османския период. В проучванията на професор Иванка Гергова, доцент Мутафов и професор Геров, стенописите се датират към самото начало на 17 век. В по-късен период западната стена на църквата е разрушена и наосът е разширен в западна посока. След това преустройство в наоса се е влизало само през входовете от юг и от север. Не е известно дали първоначално църквата е имала вход и от запад. Най-късно е пристроена към южната стена паянтова открита галерия. По-голямата част от стенописите са свалени през 1946 година от реставратора на Народния археологически музей в София Карл Йорданов и днес са част от фонда на Националния археологически институт в музей при БАН. Поради застудяване на времето и изчерпване на реставрационните материали, то успява да свали само около 15 квадратни метра от запазената стенна живопис на храма. Според Асен Василев, през същата година църквата е разрушена, така несвалените стенописи са унищожени заедно с нея. Основните сведения за иконографската програма на стенописите преди разрушаването на църквата дължим на проучването на Андрей Грабар, който посещава Несебър през 1920 година и на Асен Василиев, изследвал Свети Георги Мали през 1945. Интересно е, че техните сведения не се препокриват напълно. Фотографията е още по-ценна, защото от олтара на църквата са запазени само два малки стенописни фрагмента. Става въпрос за главата на Света Богородица от апсидата, свалена от Карл Йорданов през 1946 и главата на един от ангелите, пренесена от Иван Гошев в Църковния историко-археологически музей в София. Според сведенията на Андрей Грабар, не се вижда много добре, последната сцена в горния регистър на северната стена е Петдесетница. За разлика от него, Асен Василиев изобщо не споменава сцената и от неговия текст изглежда, че горният регистър е завършвал с възнесение. На фотографията, поне тук на компютъра, ясно се вижда, че Грабар е видял повече от стенописите на стената. И става въпрос за сцената Петдесетница. Под нея на фотографията се забелязва фигурата на Христос от видението на Свети Петър Александрийски, като сцената е отбелязана от двамата изследователи. Тук се вижда и тази рамка, която е част от тази ниша, тук в този край. Сцената явяването на Христос на мироносците е спомената от Грабар, но без да е посочено нейното местоположение. Подробни сведения за нея дава Асен Василев, който пише: над протезата бе представен Христос в цял ръст и от двете му страни по две коленичили плачущи жени. Той публикува и надписа към сцената. Под нея Асен Василев вижда в проскомидията, както пише той, образа на Свети Стефан. Грабар не споменава за изображение на Свети Стефан, но отбелязва, че там е представена сцената Пиета. Оказва се, че двамата изследователи са ни оставили верни, но недостатъчно пълни сведения. Според фотографията в протезисната ниша е имало изображение на Христос в гроба, а между нея апсидата е била фигурата на Свети Стефан в цял ръст. Интересно е, че никой от двамата изследователи не споменава надписът, разположен в пространството между протезисната ниша и северната стена. Не е струмно да се каже дали причината е в липсата на естествено осветление в олтара на църквата или това се дължи на тежкото състояние на самия надпис. Възможно е през 1945 година, когато църквата е посветена от Сен Василев, надписът да е бил напълно разрушен. Не случайно на следващата година Карл Йорданов споменава, че стенописите са вече много повредени, измити от вода и изпадали, като най-са повредени в алтаря. За съжаление, надписът е бил в много тежко състояние още по време на фотографското заснемане. В него със сигурност се е съдържала важна информация за историята на църквата и нейното изписване. Ще припомня, че публикуваният посветителски надпис с годината на изписване на църквата Свети Спас и Несебър също се намира в алтарното пространство. За съжаление, на този етап свалянето на надписа по фотографията изглежда почти невъзможно. Все пак се надявам, че нашите колеги специалисти епиграфи ще му обърнат внимание в бъдеще. Въпреки че на фотографията е документирана само северната част на алтарното пространство, на нея се забелязва липсата на конха в апсидата, което също е нова информация за църквата. Този факт обяснява и цилиндричната форма на фрагмента. Ето тук е апсидата. Този факт обяснява цилиндричната форма на фрагмента от образа на Света Богородица на трон. Тъй като стенописът е свален в техника стакло, неговата оригинална форма е все още запазена. По всичко изглежда, че изследваната фотография е била част от архива на Народния археологически музей в София. По всяка вероятност нейн автор е руският имигрант генерал Вадим Лазаркевич. Известно е, че сътрудничеството на Лазаркевич с Народния музей започва скоро след пристигането му в Несебър, но още в началото на 20-те години на 20 век, покрай честите командировки на служители от музея, той има възможност да общува с Андрей Протич, Кръстю Миятев, Александър Рашенов, Сергей Покровски. Впоследствие те намират в него надежден сътрудник, а през 1925 година музеят откупува 206 негатива и снимки от църкви, фрески и икони. Повечето известни фотографии на Лазаркевич са надписани от към гърба от самия фотограф. В настоящия случай е възможно стъклената плака да е била сред откупените от музея и да е откопирана на по-късен етап от музейните фотографии. Така снимката е попаднала и в архива на Мавродинови. Днес тази фотография разкрива неизвестни детайли от стенописите на разрушената църква Свети Георги Малия и дава възможност за нови проучвания на църковното изкуство на Несебър и зоографското ателие, което работи там в края на 16 и началото на 17 век. Остава въпроса защо никой от следователите не е забелязал надписа между протезисната ниша и северната стена на църквата. Озадачаващ е и надписът Свети Спиридон върху стъклената плака. Тези въпроси могат да имат различни обяснения, като едно от тях е, че е напълно възможно моята теория за фотографията изобщо да не е вярна. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for showing us those wonderful photos. So I'd like to now open up the discussion session. Are there any questions first for Nenad Makuljevic on the photography and icon painting? Yes, please.
Okay, it's basically one question and a couple of thoughts. The question is whether you think that the coloring of photographs might somehow be related to this interaction between photographs and painting. And second, what you presented, let's say, is very similar to sculptural works in painting or various interminglings in different media, including there is the mid-20th century, much later, the works of Gerhard Richter and Rudi, who basically, let's say, they imitate pictorial picture photograph. It looks like a photograph, but it's not.
So first, I think that is.
Would you come up here and use the microphone? So great.
So of course, there's a big relation between creating icons and photography. Actually, if you look at the history of the photography here, you will see that the same masters deal with the photography and with the icons, or the same workshops. So, of course, coloring of the photography is actually was very important part of the visual culture, but it's really very badly researched in the case which I know for Serbia, because you must be the great master to make it, and of course they costed much more, and there is relation, and of course the photography was actually visual media. Therefore, first painters, zographs took and started with the photography. That is, we know that also some priests from Serbia started with the photography. Then the Ginovsky family, who are the whole taifa of Ginovsky, one was photographer, and there are so many probably similar cases also in Bulgaria.
I just wanted to interject something. You talked about photography as a new way of seeing the world, and I just wanted to, that for sure is the case, I just wanted to push back on you a little bit, because also photography was very much about capturing the way that visual culture already was represented. So for instance, with portraits, you have this translation of the tradition already established in painting from portraiture. And so I just wonder how you account for that, whether it's not already a replication, an emulation on some level of already established genres.
There is a relation, of course, and actually that is also well known, that probably in the first moment, the experience of the visual representation, which was made by painters, for example, was used in the photography, but actually very soon. It means also immediately the specificity of the photography was something which really shaped photography. For example, we usually think about the photography as capturing the moment, but if you look how were photographs have been produced in the 19th century, that was impossible actually. If you want to shoot photography, you need much more time, and therefore the technology of photography is a very important part in the research of the photography. So you have this very complicated process of the shooting, then you have some kind of rewriting photography, putting more lights or black or coloring and so on. So it was really one very specific process, and now it is very well, I think, researched in the case of the France or anywhere else. In the case of our cases, Balkan cases, I think it's not so good.
For example, one of the first Bulgarian photographers were Anastasia Stoyanov from Samokov, who started with paper icons, engraving them using the technique of lithography, and then switched to photography. They are absolutely directly connected. But you think as a Westerner, on the Balkans at that time, there were not portraits of layermen. First, they appear in photography, and they started to copy them in the iconography. For example, there are late Samokov icons of Saint Alexander Nevsky that imitates the scene of that time photo atelier in Istanbul and so on.
Thank you very much for elucidating those points.
But I've seen Mount Athos. There were some photographers, especially the Serbian one, Nifon, Father Nifon, who used to be painters as well. And I've seen photos even earlier than Nifon, from Iouasafei, for example, that they use real monks, some full in Christ, dressed as St. John the Baptist, to make a photo and then copy as a model to be made.
They're excellent examples. I think that is actually the very big field, the great field, and that was my intention, just to start discussion and maybe to start much more looking sometimes in the details, how something perceived. Of course, we can maybe we can for sure find many more, but that what is very interesting actually, that photography was excellently accepted by the Orthodox clergy. They had no problem with the acceptance of the photography on the Balkans, and that is something what is, I think, very, very important.
Interesting. In the interest of time, let's open up questions for Olga Vasi, please. Please.
A brief question, whether you found similar patterns in manuscript illuminations. Whether you compared manuscript illuminations from Nea Moni, to Nea Moni, or let's say, manuscript buildings in manuscript illuminations.
No, my research was only concentrated only on monumental painting, not on illumination.
Right behind you.
I would have, a small question again. I think that in donor portraits, what you would represent is rather an effigy of the monument and not a photographical reproduction of the monument. Especially at the time, probably they were not interested in revealing all the details, although also it was also very difficult to do so. To my mind, from what I've seen from your pictures, all of the churches, except maybe for the last one, are really similar to what was painted on the wall. So I think as it's very recognizable. It's rather, of course, arches are maybe rendered differently here and there, but as a whole, they seemed similar. In Moldavian mural representations of the 15th and mainly 16th century, it's quite the same. They are not equally the same, but you can recognize the church from the effigy, the shape. As for the last representation of the Saint Paraskeva, if I'm not wrong, well, I personally do not know any representation of a voting offering of an incense or of a liturgical vessel. Do you know? Would it be? Would it serve as an analogy, or rather, the church in its initial form looked different? Is this an hypothesis? I don't know. That's my question, actually.
No, I don't think that the church had initially another architectural type. No, I don't think. No. As for the liturgical vessels, it's a suggestion from a researcher, Greek one, from another church in Crete, that it is not a church, the replica of a church, the painted copy of a church, but of a tabernacle. Anyway, I also know books. Yeah, but in a monumental painting, a donation of books. Yeah, in money. You know, the region of money.
Are there any more questions?
Thank you. It was really a fascinating paper, just because I don't know this monument. And because I'm dealing recently with burial chapels, Arcosolia, and so on. But I noticed a very, very interesting shape in Panagia Karavlidana. That reminds me of Swiss roofs, which puzzled me. And this is a replica to Fedon. The local Cypriot explanation of these double roofs, like in Switzerland, but appeared in Cyprus, is that first of all there is snow there. What kind of snow? Once in 10 years, about 10 centimeters. We in Bulgaria don't have such roofs, and they are even double. And the second explanation is that Cyprus is a seismic region that explains this architectural type. But what we are talking about, Peloponnese, it's much more seismic. I agree with the previous speaker that they are highly conventional, but they remind in general the shape of this. Probably it's a direction to think about Cypriot influence.
There is a whole study from a Serbian researcher, Čedomila Marinkovic, on. Do you know her? For the copies, the painted copies in the Serbian monasteries, and this is the conclusion also from her, that always the copies, either they are faithful as in Panagia Krina, other not, but always, yeah, they give the image of the church, always.
All right, then I'll move to the paper by Fedon Haji Antonio. Are there any questions?
If I may, I was really impressed by your identification, but I'm not sure I understood right. So this Barbu you're suggesting might be Gavril Trotușanu, the Moldavian boyar? Nastural says so. He had a really huge problem in Moldavia. He was considered a traitor by the Prince Petru Rareș, who lost his throne. And then when he came back to be a prince, to reign, he killed Trotușanu. He is famous. Two boyars were considered, he claimed, so as traitors, and they were killed by the prince. And we know for sure that he has a foundation, a church founded in near Suceava, it's Părhăuț, and he's not buried there. But probably it's not buried there because he was killed as a traitor. And it was the consequence of the same punishment. So, to my mind, it would be blowing to know that his bones were transferred to Athos in such conditions. So, this is very.
Let's remain in contact.
If it's the same boyar.
What's going on with DNA test?
Oh, right. That would be really interesting.
No, I'm not surprised if there are some women there buried.
Yeah, rather.
Stana, for example. Because if I was, if my wife, I mean, I'm retired in the monastery, not as a monk, but to live there out of the monastery with my sons. That means that my wife died. My wife died. So when she's deposed, why not taking the bones to where?
Allowed? Was it allowed?
The bones?
The bones?
Of course, why not? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Did you have a comment? No. Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, in the interest of time, let's move to questions for our last presentation for Ivan Banev. Are there any questions? Did he actually leave the room? Okay. Well, for reason of absence, then I will conclude the discussion.
I will fire him. He's my new deputy director.
Don't be too tough.
Yes.
He showed a picture of a Pietà, if I'm not wrong, of a Pietà.
One of the researchers at embassy the church thought that it was
Pietà. What is the church it is coming from?
Ivan supposed that these fragments belong to the church of Saint George the Little in Mesembria.
In Mesembria.
It was ruined in the 50s by the communists, and most of the fragments were transferred to the National Archaeological Museum. Some of them are in the exposition of the crypt you're going to visit tomorrow. And we were doing on a project elaborating our archive, and he found this old photograph that belonged to the Rodinovi family.
So it's coming from a church in Mesembria, in Neseba. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And it was on prophecies, you said, proskomivi, eh? On prophecies. Thank you.
Are there any remaining questions for our last speaker of today? All right, well then I'll conclude our discussion session, and I think Emmanuel wanted to say a few words.
Thank you very much. I will catch the last sentence of the Fedon's statement. Let's remain in contact. Probably the biggest achievement of this forum, I'm trying to run for 5 years and I'm totally exhausted, is that we created a net of scholars with similar interests and probably with similar goals in science. During these 5 years, we established friendship and, for example, created a new project under the auspices of the Union Académique Internationale that involves NENAT, I mean the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts, Constantin Ciubanu, that means Romanian Academy, Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, and the Albanian Academy of Sciences via Konstantinos Iakomis. So we talked during the lunch break with Emily, and she has an idea and wants to use the already established net in order to provoke you to take part in a new project. So I'm giving her again the floor to explain what she means.
And I'll just take 2 minutes of your time because the jazz party awaits, most importantly. Besides my work as a Byzantine and Renaissance art historian, I'm also doing research and collaborations in the area of digital reproductions of heritage, art, and AI in particular. And I'm very happy to have just started a position as the Ethics, AI, and Digital Reproductions advisor for the Paris-based foundation called Iconem, which you may have heard of because it has done a lot of the reproductions of the ISIS-Daesh destroyed monuments in Syria and Iraq. And we're very excited right now at the foundation to be working closely with UNESCO, coming up with some ideas for creating some guidelines, standards, and practices for the representation of culture in the digital format in a platform that then can be used as a way to perhaps better represent world heritage sites, monuments, and artifacts. And I will be starting also at the same time in July a position at Columbia where I'm bringing the Historic Preservation Department and the Computer Vision Science Department closely together. And I've proposed to build a database of Byzantine and post-Byzantine icons, which would then be amenable to a subset of AI called machine learning, which can very accurately group large pots of images together according to stylistic affinities. And it would be really wonderful to get the community to be interested in being a part of this creation of a digital platform to allow for collaborations and transmissions, open access and use of images of icons. And there's a lot of work that can really easily be done with machine vision analysis of icons, because icons are actually particularly suitable for the developments that have happened in computer vision science to analyze things and to group them according to certain features. And we hope to be able to create some very interesting maps showing the relationships of icons that we here in this room are the experts on these subjects. And I can say that I personally will sometimes get confused when I see one icon and I mistake it for a memory of an image I saw in another publication or another museum. It would be very useful to be able to cut across collections and borders, to be able to see what we have, to be able to further enhance this already very rich discussion that we're having about Byzantine and post-Byzantine art, but specifically for icons. So if you're interested in being a part of this endeavor and to create a community for these things, please do contact me, talk to me, and I can provide you with more information as we're developing these collaborations, especially with Columbia, Iconum, and UNESCO. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to all of you over some beautiful jazz music. All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Knowing where we are with the Balkans, I will propose the opposite way.